You are listening to 87.1 Caroline Radio, KCGM Bakersfield. Your home for all your variety hits, just like the Aaron's Opinion podcast. Hey, everybody, welcome back. How are you? Glad you're having a good week, or glad you had a good week whenever you listen to this. My name's Aaron Richmond. This is Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people where we talk about issues in the blindness community. We're basically everywhere you hear the podcast, from Apple to Spreaker to Spotify, you name it, we're probably there. You can also be watching us on YouTube or following us on Twitter, Facebook, or Patreon. You know, tonight we're talking to someone who I've kind of known of and kind of been following in the Facebook and social media community. I'm friends with him on Facebook. We've kind of known of each other for a while. Never really got a chance to have a sit-down interview like this. We're really glad to be talking to Stuart Soulek this evening. Stuart, why don't you basically tell your inspirational story from kind of the darkness and then walk us out of the tunnel into the beautiful light that you are in today. It's all very interesting. I will mute my microphone for a bit. If I have questions, I'll let you know, but go ahead. Talk. Go ahead.
All right. So my name is Stuart Soulek. I was born and partially raised in Los Angeles. I have 4 sisters. We were all adopted from birth. So my mother adopted us all as kids. She took us from our drug exposed, our mothers. We were all highly under the experience of drugs because, well, they decided, my mom and my sister's moms, they were all using drugs and so we were taken out of a harmful situation when we were kids, as babies. I was born a preemie. I was 1 pound 9 ounces, as I said earlier, that I had 4 sisters, all of them going through the same conditions that I did. However, I had my sight up to S5, but due to retinopathy of prematurity, I lost it. And I gradually lost it. I didn't lose it right off the bat. It, happened over a span of time. Luckily, the doctor had said to me that luckily you lost it when you were young, because if you had lost it later, you might have ran into a lot more trouble with learning different concepts of Braille, literacy, and everything else. So, I was raised in a pretty good home. I went to elementary school, got kicked out of that for some behavioral issues when I was, a youth. Things didn't work out, partly because I wasn't really understood and I wasn't really getting the resources that I needed at a young age to fully find my potential. And, I had a resource teacher and everything, and I was going to Washington Elementary School all the way up till maybe about the 2nd grade. And then I got kicked out of that due to behavioral issues. And I ended up hearing about the California School for the Blind, CSB, up in Fremont, California in the Bay Area. And this is where I say I was partially raised in Los Angeles. Then I went up to the Bay Area. So I was about 12 years old, because I was a late starter, by the way, in school. And I went there. I started my journey learning about technology, learning about all the things that, most blind people learn about when they're young and when they're kids, from Braille to understanding how to comprehend Braille, how to learn basic O&M skills, everything from nature, learning from things like in technology, from the Braille and GPS, to humanware, to Apple, to all the different wonderful things of technology. And I had a very good understanding of it, but you see, so this is where everything starts to go down. So, I was doing good in school, and I was always good at school. I was always good at progressing in school. You could put me in front of a book and I could sit there and study it and memorize it, but I always lacked the social skills of a regular person. And what I mean by that is I was always socially different from a lot of people. How I would interact with people, I would not really talk appropriately. I was always very out of control when it came to my behavior. And I would just say things like without a filter. There was no, you know, thinking before I did as a kid. It was just go, 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 do whatever, and just let it all loose and hang out. And the problem is, as me and you both know as an adult, it's socially unacceptable behavior in a lot of situations. So I would, act on impulsively. And it led me down to some bad choices. But what happened was so I started the baking career a little young. I got a little taste of it, and this is how I actually started my addiction, actually. So, funny story was I got from DOR, they gave me an opportunity. I remember I was maybe about 20 years old, maybe 19, and they sent me off to Enchanted Hills Camp. And that, for those of you guys who do not know that are listening, it is a great camp. It is located in Napa, California. I believe Tony Fletcher is still the operation that oversees the campsite. But unfortunately, things happened to where it got destroyed because of a fire, because of the California fires. But back to the story. So I went there, and the DOR, they paid for me to have an internship as a food prep in a kitchen. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know anything about culinary. I don't know experience, So I got there, I showed up. It was supposed to start June 22nd of 2013. And I got there unknowing what was going to happen. I was with a lot of fellow people. And I got there and I met my boss. And he was a totally blind baker. Well, that's what he called himself. But apparently he has had experience in the culinary world as a professional pastry chef, baker. His name is Dan. I don't know his last name, but I guess that's a good thing, so I can, keep that anonymous. But he started, mentoring me, and we would do different things like making breakfast for the campers, and we would do different things in the kitchen, like making dinner, making rolls, making desserts, and everything. And so I got, in that week time, I got to experience it. It was a good thing because it opened my eyes to experiencing, different job opportunities in the workforce. And I really liked it. However, I actually started, I got into the habit of smoking there because, I would see one of my coworkers go off in the closet, and I'd be like, oh, why do you always go there and take breaks? And he goes, oh, I got to show you something. And he showed me a vape, and I'm like, oh man, this is, cool. So I remember, youthfully, being all innocent.
My microphone was muting. I just started, you tell this story in such a very articulate and lighthearted way. I started laughing at that part. Yeah, that's the material. Oh, what's the, and then they just, all right. So yeah, he shows you the vape, and then what?
So
Yeah.
I took a hit. I remember I took a hit, and I'm like, oh man, I like this. This is cool. He goes, it helps us stress a lot in the culinary world. And I'm like, oh man, because I was working long hours. I was constantly, running back and forth with different trays, hauling, are we allowed to cuss in here? I guess I'll keep it clean. Hauling 100 miles an hour. And
oh, by the way, on my podcast, you are allowed to cuss because this is marked explicit. So, yeah,
okay. I didn't know what kind of audience we were trying to cater to, so I was trying to keep it a little PG. Okay, so I was hauling crazy ass, and I'm going 100 miles an hour, and so another one of my friends, they showed me weed, and I didn't know nothing. I didn't even know how to smoke a cigarette, for God's sake. So we were all in a circle after a work shift, and this is one of my friends. We slept in the same bunk. It was a bunk bed because we were in cabins, and the Tony Fletcher had us all sleep in cabins to work us together. So we did. So it was late at night, and I got off the shift, and I'm tired. And my friend's like, "Hey, come with me." I go, "Okay," innocently, not knowing. And they lit up weed, and I'm like, "Oh man, I don't know about doing this." They're like, "Just try it. Just inhale like you're inhaling, like you're sucking in on a straw. Like just inhale and just blow out." And I said, "Okay, I'll just try it. What can hurt? Just a little bit, right?" Now, prior to me knowing all this stuff, I had no idea. Well, I knew that my mom was an addict, but I didn't know that the dangers of what it could happen if you are a pre-exposed baby, because I was kicking heroin when I first came out of my mom's womb. And I didn't know that at the time. But I knew that my mom used drugs, but I didn't know the damage that it can accidentally do and how it can make you physically addicted. And so I remember starting smoking pot, and, when we'd get off shifts, and I didn't think anything of it, and I continued to, indulge, and I, put a stop on it for a while, and I just continued to resume, culinary, and while I was there, and I learned a lot. It was a very good experience. But I always was socially different, and I could never figure out the selfishness that I withheld inside me, and all the behavioral issues and all the things that needed to be worked out. So I just continued to live my life recklessly, and once I got out of camp, I was still continuing off with CSB. And I was always just getting in trouble. I was always that class clown, always making the jokes, look at Stuart. He's always getting in trouble, this guy. And, there was a saying that I remember when I was a kid, my mom used to always say to everyone when they would, deal with me, and they would go, well, Stuart's always Stuart, And I took it on like, yeah, damn right, I'm always me. That's who I am. And I, continued to go down that dark path. And I think it's very important to say this, and I'm probably going to insult a lot of people when I say this, but I see it in a lot of blind people, and not saying yourself, because, I can tell you have a really good head on your shoulders, but I see it in a lot on all these different apps like Pharrell and Dabble and all these different apps where it's just, they're constantly promoting weed and alcohol and drugs. And it's like, but at the time when I was in that lifestyle, I didn't know that there was a better way. I didn't know that you can wake up with a sober mind and wake up. And so I continued to proceed down that path, being bitter and irritable and hatred towards everybody, and just self-will gone riot. And it just continued to go into unpleasant territory. People didn't want me around. They would be talking in secret around me like if I was some unknown alien, And no one didn't want nothing to do with me, and I didn't understand why. I was like, "What's wrong? I'm the life of the party." I show up with all the drugs, I show up with all the, the alcohol and everything. But what ended up happening was people just started pushing me away, and I realized I was just getting in constant trouble. And I could never understand. I'm like, man, it's always my fault. Everyone's, I'm always getting the bad end of the stick. And it just continued to go on and on like that. And I remember finally, after CSB, I didn't have really the best graduation. I remember going into graduation, and I kind of didn't really, I got my certificate, but I really didn't get recognized because there was really nothing good to recognize about me, because I was just this angry kid, just lost in self-will, and and I went to college, and I tried doing college, but I wasn't mature enough. I didn't want to see that it required responsibility, it required dedication. All these things that you do in life, it requires the will to drive and the will to get behind the car and, pull out of your parking structure and, get moving on the road. And I didn't want to see that. I thought that I was going to be the passenger of my life and people were just going to drive me around. I didn't see that I needed to do a little bit of work, and people could help me, but I needed to do a little work. And so I remember after CSB, just sitting at home for about 2 or 3 years, just nonstop, playing the victim, and all this stuff. And it got me nowhere. Just eventually, I think what did it for me, what really made me open my eyes, when my mom, one day I came back home from a program, because I was in a day treatment program, and it's basically like you go in a group and share your feelings and yada yada yada. And I remember coming home, my mom goes, "Pack your stuff, you're leaving." And I go, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "You're not welcome here anymore." I go, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "I can't have your atrocious behavior here anymore." And it planted a seed in my head because
Right.
it's like
Right.
it,
And really, you're doing an outstanding job. And
mhm.